All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are tackling a virus that, honestly, the name alone is enough to send a chill down your spine, Ebola. But what is it that makes this one so uniquely dangerous? We're going to get into the science and figure out what's really going on. So, what makes a virus uniquely dangerous? Is it just about how deadly it is, or how easily it jumps from person to person? Maybe it's about where it hides out when we're not looking. Well, with Ebola, it's kind of the perfect, terrifying storm of all three. And to really get why, we've got to first meet its family. Okay, so Ebola is part of this, let's call it a rogues gallery of illnesses known as viral hemorrhagic fevers. And yeah, that name sounds bad for a reason. These are all RNA viruses, and what they can do, in the worst cases, is just wreak havoc on the body. They mess with its ability to keep itself stable, and that can lead to shock, organ failure, and bleeding. But here's the thing. Even in this pretty nasty group, not all viruses are playing the same game. So let's take a look at this dangerous family. You gotta understand the whole landscape to really see why Ebola is in a class of its own. Okay, so you've got three main players here. First up, the Flaviviridae family. Think dengue, right? You get that from mosquitoes. Then you have the Aeronaviridae, like Lassa virus. That one usually comes from rodents, and thankfully, it's not great at spreading between people. But then there's the filoviridae. This is the family that includes Marburg and, you guessed it, Ebola. And this group is notorious for one big reason. Once it makes the jump to a human, it can spread from person to person with horrifying efficiency. All right, so let's zoom right in on that filoviridae family, because we need to see what makes one of its members such a standout threat. Yeah, just because they're related doesn't mean they're all the same. Not at all. When you actually line them up and compare them, you see this huge difference in how good they are at being deadly and at spreading. And Miss Chart, wow, it just lays it all out, doesn't it? I mean, look at dengue and Lassa. Their fatality rates are pretty low, and they really have a hard time spreading between us. Marburg? Okay, that's a definite step up. It's deadlier, it spreads easier. But Ebola is just playing on a completely different level. It's got that efficient person-to-person spread and a crazy high fatality rate, the worst of both worlds. So how high are we talking? Well, in a lot of Ebola outbreaks, the case fatality rate is over 50%. Let that sink in. That means, on average, more than 1 out of every 2 people who get sick don't make it. Okay, so a virus that's that deadly and that efficient has to come from somewhere, right? But where? Where does it hide out? And this right here is one of the biggest, most frustrating mysteries in the whole Ebola story. See, to stop future outbreaks before they even start, scientists are desperately hunting for what's called the natural reservoir. That's the animal host where the virus just lives. It hangs out, probably not even making the animal sick, before it spills over into people. And for a lot of other viruses, we figured this out. We know Lassa hangs out in rodents. We know for a fact that Marburg, Ebola's closest cousin, lives in a specific species of fruit bat. But Ebola? It's still just a giant, frustrating question mark. Think about this. For almost 50 years, scientists have been searching, and we still haven't definitively found its natural home. And that is a massive problem. Because if you don't know where the enemy's base is, how can you ever predict or prevent the next attack? So that's mystery number 1. The second big challenge is what happens after a spillover event. Once Ebola gets into the human population, it has this absolutely terrifying knack for spreading. It is just dangerously good at what it does. It spreads through direct contact, and get this, some estimates say it might only take as few as 10 virus particles to get someone sick. 10. That puts healthcare workers at an unbelievable risk. In one outbreak, they were something like 40 times more likely to be infected. And to make it all worse, there's even some evidence that people could be contagious before they even feel sick. That just makes containment an absolute nightmare. But maybe one of the most unsettling, just deeply creepy things we've learned about Ebola is what happens after someone gets better. For the people who are lucky enough to survive, the battle might not actually be over. It's a phenomenon called viral persistence. And what it means is that the virus can actually retreat and hide out in certain parts of the body long after a patient is considered cured and feels perfectly fine. It basically finds these little safe houses in the body, places called immune privileged sites. These are spots where our immune system doesn't really have a strong presence. Think about the eyes, the central nervous system, the reproductive organs. And because it can hide there, it means it can potentially reemerge later. Or, and this is the really scary part, it can still be transmitted to someone else. And look, this is not just a theory. There was a documented case where the Ebola virus was found in a survivor's semen for more than 500 days. Over 500 days. And that actually led to a new infection, starting a whole new cluster of cases, more than a year after everyone thought the outbreak was finished. Okay, so this all sounds pretty grim, I know. But the story doesn't end there. Because when you're faced with an enemy this tough, science fights back hard. So let's talk about the counterattack. And here's the breakthrough. We now have effective vaccines against Ebola. And this is a huge, huge deal. It's the result of this incredible global effort, really kicked into high gear after the West Africa epidemic. We're talking modern vaccines that use a harmless carrier virus to basically show our immune system a mugshot of Ebola, training it to recognize and fight the real bad guy, without ever putting us in danger. But there's always a but, isn't there? The catch is trying to prove how well a vaccine works in the middle of a chaotic, terrifying, unpredictable outbreak is a whole different ballgame from your standard, clean clinical trial. And this really highlights the challenge. See, the gold standard for testing a vaccine is this randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial. Some people get the shot, some get a placebo. Nobody knows who got what. But you can't do that with Ebola. It's completely unethical to give a sugar pill to someone who might be exposed to a disease this deadly. So instead, scientists get clever. They use strategies like ring vaccination. Basically, find a case and then vaccinate everyone they've been in contact with and everyone those people have been in contact with, creating a protective ring around the virus. It's brilliant and it works, but it just doesn't give you the same kind of rock-solid data you get from a traditional trial. So when you put it all together, you see it's not just one thing. It's this perfect storm of challenges that makes Ebola so uniquely dangerous. You've got the mystery source we can't find. You've got its terrifying efficiency at spreading between people. You have its ghost-like ability to hang around in survivors. And on top of all that, you have the massive real-world hurdles to actually fighting it on the ground. It's the combination of all of these things that sets it apart. And all of this really leads us to one big, urgent question. Given everything we know, how does the world get ready for the next outbreak before it starts? Because if the last decade has taught us anything, it's that we can't just wait for the alarm bells to start ringing. The real fight against a virus like Ebola, it's won in the quiet times, in the prep work we do between the crises.